Here is something you almost certainly do not think about. Every evening, in kitchens across the United States, approximately 50 million households perform a ritual that the rest of the developed world finds, depending on who you ask, either baffling, vaguely disgusting, or a particularly revealing symptom of American excess. They scrape their dinner plates into the sink. They flip a switch, and a small electric motor, spinning at nearly 2,000 rotations per minute, shreds their food waste into a slurry and flushes it directly into the municipal sewer system. The garbage disposal, the incinerator, the thing under the sink that makes the noise. Americans use them without a second thought. They are listed in real estate ads as amenities. They come standard in new builds from Maine to Arizona. To an American renter, the absence of one is a minor inconvenience, like a bathroom without an exhaust fan. Technically functional, but subtly wrong. Now step outside the United States. In Germany, garbage disposals are illegal in most municipalities. Full stop. Not regulated. Not taxed. Illegal, on the grounds that they overload the sewer system and disrupt wastewater treatment. In the United Kingdom, they are permitted but almost entirely absent, a market penetration rate hovering somewhere around 6%. In Japan, a country that has productized nearly every conceivable kitchen appliance and sells heated toilet seats as a mass-market commodity, garbage disposals remain a curiosity found mainly in Western-style apartments marketed to expatriates. In Australia, New Zealand, Canada, countries that share a language, a legal heritage, and a broadly similar post-war consumer culture with America, adoption remains a fraction of the American rate. Think about that for a moment with the full absurdity it deserves. The United States and Canada share the longest undefended border on Earth. They watch the same television. They eat the same fast food. They use the same electrical outlets, the same plumbing standards, the same building codes in most respects. And yet one of them has a grinding machine under virtually every residential kitchen sink, and the other one mostly does not. This is not, it turns out, a story about food. It is a story about one obsessive engineer in Wisconsin, one city in Ohio that faced a waste crisis it could not solve, one federal agency that should not have been involved at all, and about how the specific, local, contingent circumstances of mid-century American city building created a technology that the rest of the world's cities were, for reasons entirely outside their control, structurally unable to absorb. Why did this happen? And why did it happen only here? Quick pause. These documentaries take weeks of research to build right. No studio, no algorithm bait, just obsessively sourced history. If this is the kind of content you want more of, subscribe now. We're building something here, and early subscribers are the whole reason it survives. Takes 2 seconds. Helps more than you know. Alright, back to it. Here is the answer, before we go any further, because the journey is better when you know where it ends. The American garbage disposal exists and dominates for 4 reasons that collided in a window of approximately 20 years, between 1935 and 1955, and never opened again anywhere else on Earth. First, one deeply strange man in Racine, Wisconsin spent 11 years trying to sell a product that nobody wanted, and nearly went broke doing it. Second, a post-World War II housing construction boom built tens of millions of American homes with wide, modern sewer pipes specifically designed, at enormous federal expense, to handle exactly this kind of load. Third, a public health crisis around garbage collection in American cities made the alternative to the disposal genuinely, viscerally terrifying in a way that is almost impossible to recreate today. And fourth, European cities, for reasons of ancient infrastructure and dense geography, were simply physically incapable of saying yes to this technology, regardless of whether they wanted to. No villain, no conspiracy, no American exceptionalism chosen deliberately. Just 4 historical dominoes, falling in sequence, in a window that closed before most of the world could even see it opening. Let's go back to the beginning. In 1927, a General Electric engineer named John W. Hamas was renovating his kitchen in Racine, Wisconsin, reportedly trying to make his wife's life easier, a motivation that, depending on your disposition, you will find either charming or an entire dissertation topic. The problem he was trying to solve was simple and universal. Food scraps are disgusting to deal with. You collect them in a bin. The bin sits on the counter or under the sink. It smells. Flies investigate. You carry it outside, where it sits in a larger bin that also smells, until the garbage collector arrives, which in 1927 might be once a week, might be twice, depending on your city and your luck. Hamas's solution was to put an electric motor under the sink, attach spinning impellers to it, and let the resulting mechanism grind food waste small enough to wash it away with the dishwater. He called the resulting device the incinerator. He spent the next 11 years trying to convince literally anyone to buy it. The reception was not warm. Plumbers called it a pipe-clogging catastrophe in waiting. Municipal engineers warned that sewer systems were designed to handle human waste and water, not shredded carrot tops and chicken bones. Housewives, the intended market, were, by contemporary accounts, largely skeptical that adding an electric motor to a sink was a good idea. Appliance retailers declined to carry it. Investors were not interested. By 1938, Incinerator Manufacturing Company had sold approximately 52 units. 52. For an entire decade of work. At that rate, Hamas would have needed approximately 1,000 years to achieve the market penetration that American homes would eventually reach in 20. The technology was not bad. The timing was not right. And the infrastructure, the physical pipes running under American streets, was not yet the infrastructure that would make this device viable at scale. That infrastructure was about to be built. For completely unrelated reasons. World War II ended in 1945. Approximately 16 million Americans came home from overseas service. They came home to a country that had not built significant residential housing in 15 years, suppressed first by the Great Depression and then by wartime resource rationing. They came home, and they got married, and they had children at a rate that demographers are still processing. And they needed houses. The federal government's response was one of the largest infrastructure investments in American history. The GI Bill subsidized mortgages. The Federal Housing Administration standardized construction specifications. And across suburban America, in the new Levittowns and their 10,000 imitators, millions of homes were built from the same template. Spacious, modern, equipped with new appliances, and connected to newly constructed sewer systems with wide-bore pipes and significant design capacity. This is the detail that changes everything. These new sewer systems were not the cramped, century-old brick tunnels running under London or Paris or Amsterdam. They were not the ancient Roman-era drainage infrastructure retrofitted through centuries of sedimentary addition. They were engineered from scratch in the mid-20th century with modern materials and significant overcapacity because American planners, building for a boom they could see coming, built bigger than they immediately needed. And Incinerator saw the opening. The company pivoted aggressively. It marketed directly to home builders, offering the disposal as a standard feature, and upgrade builders could advertise as modern, clean, and scientific. It lobbied cities to approve the technology, commissioning independent studies showing that modern sewer systems could handle the additional organic load with minimal strain. Then came the public health argument that sealed it. American cities in the late 1940s had a garbage problem. Collection infrastructure had not kept pace with the post-war suburban explosion. Organic household waste sitting in residential bins was a legitimate public health concern, linked to rodent populations, fly breeding, and the vague but genuine specter of disease that animated post-war domestic anxieties with great effectiveness. The disposal offered a clean answer to a dirty problem. Flush it away. Make it disappear. Make it science's problem, not yours. By 1950, cities including Seattle and Jasper, Indiana, had conducted official tests. Jasper, Indiana, in a study that the garbage disposal industry has cited ever since, actually made the incinerator mandatory in all new residential construction. Mandatory. Sales multiplied. Competitors entered the market. By 1960, the disposal was embedded, literally, physically embedded, in the infrastructure and culture of American domestic life. The window, for the rest of the world, had already quietly closed. Let's be precise about something, because it matters. The story that often gets told at this point, the story that Europe chose not to adopt the garbage disposal for environmental or philosophical reasons, that Europeans made a morally conscious decision to compost rather than consume, is, in most cases, flatly wrong. Or at best, it has the causation reversed. Europe did not reject the disposal. Europe's infrastructure rejected it on Europe's behalf, before the question was ever seriously posed. Consider London. The modern London sewer system was designed by Joseph Bazalgette in the 1860s, following the Great Stink of 1858, an event in which the River Thames, choked with untreated human waste, became so overwhelmingly malodorous that Parliament itself was forced to adjourn. Bazalgette's solution was engineering genius for its era, an interconnected network of brick-lined tunnels, gravity-fed, draining to treatment works east of the city. Those tunnels are still there. They are still in active use. They serve a city that has grown from roughly 3 million people to nearly 9 million people since they were built. They are running, by most measures, at or near capacity with the loads they were designed for. The idea of adding organic food slurry from millions of additional households to a Victorian-era brick sewer is not a policy question in London. It is an engineering impossibility that would require tearing up a significant portion of one of the most densely built cities on Earth to address. Paris is older. Amsterdam is older. Rome's drainage infrastructure has elements that predate the Common Era. Then there is pipe diameter. The bore of residential drain pipes in much of Europe, particularly in older housing stock, is narrower than American equivalents. Not dramatically so, but enough that the ground-up food slurry that American disposals produce, traveling through the wastewater stream, is more likely to aggregate with fats and other solids and form the kind of blockages that sewer engineers call, with technical precision, fatbergs, and that the rest of us call nightmares. In 2019, workers excavating a fatberg beneath the streets of London found a mass of congealed fat, wet wipes, and organic matter stretching for 250 meters and weighing approximately 40 metric tons. That was without garbage disposals contributing to the load. Germany's prohibition is not cultural fastidiousness. It is a specific, engineering-grounded decision that wastewater treatment plants optimized for specific organic loads would be disrupted by additional fine particle food matter, disrupting the bacterial ecosystems that make biological sewage treatment function. Japan's geography compounds the problem. Japanese cities are dense in ways that make American suburbs look positively rural. The plumbing infrastructure in a typical Japanese apartment building was not designed for American-style disposal loads. The building stock is also old. Retrofitting is expensive. And unlike the American post-war moment, Japan never had a federally subsidized new construction boom that rebuilt residential plumbing infrastructure from scratch at massive scale. The Europeans and Japanese didn't make a superior choice. They were never presented with the same choice at all. Here is where it gets interesting, because infrastructure does not just carry water. It carries assumptions. And assumptions, over decades, become values. The garbage disposal did something more subtle than convenience. It made a problem invisible. In a household without one, food waste has a physical presence and a physical journey. You see how much you wasted at dinner. You smell it by Tuesday. You carry it outside. Waste is legible. It has weight and texture and consequence. Composting cultures emerged in Europe not primarily because Europeans are environmentally enlightened, but because Europeans had to do something with the physical stuff, and composting was a rational solution to a tangible problem that lived in their kitchens. In an American kitchen, the waste goes down the drain. It becomes someone else's problem, or rather, it becomes infrastructure's problem, which in practice means it becomes no one's problem, because infrastructure operates below the threshold of daily attention. This difference, legible waste versus invisible waste, has compounding effects. American cities, whose residents have been flushing their food waste for 70 years, have less political pressure to develop composting infrastructure. American consumers, who have never had to see and carry their food scraps, have less visceral understanding of how much they discard. The disposal did not create American food waste. Americans wasted food long before Hamas built his first prototype. But it changed the relationship between the consumer and the consequence. And this is the deeper mechanism that historical domino stories always eventually reveal. The technology we build to solve a problem also builds us, quietly, in the process of solving it. The solution to a 1940s garbage collection crisis became the invisible architecture of a particular relationship with consumption, one that is now so structurally embedded that changing it would require, at minimum, replacing the pipes under 50 million houses, which, not coincidentally, is exactly as hard as it sounds. So here is the perfect storm that was required. One stubborn engineer who spent 11 years selling 52 units because he believed, without substantial evidence that a grinding machine under the sink was the future of domestic life. One world war that brought 16 million people home to a country that had to build, quickly, the most expansive residential infrastructure project in human history, and built it with pipes wide enough to handle whatever you put through them. One public health panic about rotting food in suburban bins that made "put it down the drain" feel like a civic virtue. And one set of ancient European sewers, built for a different century and a different load, that made the same solution physically impossible to import. Remove any single domino, and this story ends differently. If the post-war housing boom had used narrower pipes, as European builders typically did, the disposal never scales. If American garbage collection had been better organized in the late 1940s, if the public health crisis had been less acute, there is no emotional urgency to adopt the alternative. If John Hammes had given up in 1935, as any rational businessman probably should have, some other engineer might have found the moment, or might not have. But here is the final irony, the one that makes this story complete. Joseph Bazalgette, the engineer who designed the London sewer system in the 1860s, made one famous decision above all others. He built his tunnels bigger than the calculations required. He looked at the population projections, estimated the sewage load, determined the required pipe diameter, and then doubled it. "We're only going to do this once," he reportedly reasoned. "We might as well do it right." He was correct. His oversized Victorian tunnels have served London for 160 years and are still running today. But in building them just right for London, perfectly, precisely, durably for London, he also built them exactly wrong for the incinerator. His sewers were never going to absorb that additional load. His infrastructure was never going to allow that particular convenience to take root. A Victorian engineer, building a sewer to end a crisis about human waste, decided, with complete decisiveness, what would and would not be in your British kitchen 160 years later. And you thought you were just doing the dishes. The garbage disposal is one of hundreds of technologies that exist in America and almost nowhere else, each with a story exactly this strange. If you want the next one, it's already up.